3,000 drachmas. That number appeared in a transaction record at the Delos harbour market in 335 before Common Era. It was the price paid for a single Theban noblewoman, a woman who weeks earlier had commanded a household staff, received guests in embroidered wool, and worn the gold fibulae of a ruling family. The same week, unprocessed captives from the same fallen city sold for 75 drachmas each. Identical war, identical ship, identical chains. The gap between 75 and 3,000 had nothing to do with beauty. It had nothing to do with youth. A free Athenian labourer earned 1 drachma per day. That means a prepared queen cost 3,000 days of a free man's labour. The traders logged every woman under the same word, Soma, body, a line in a ledger. The prepared ones never fought back at auction. That 40 times markup did not happen by accident. It required a pipeline. In 348 before Common Era, Philip II of Macedon razed the city of Olynthus and sold its entire population, men, women, children, at military liquidation rates. The buyers waiting at the city gates were not soldiers. They were licensed commercial traders the Greeks called Andrapodistai, literally, men who sell men. They followed Greek armies the way surgeons follow modern ones, necessary, professional, and invisible in the official records of glory. They purchased captives in bulk from commanding generals who needed fast silver to pay their troops. Typically 30 to 50 drachmas per head, purchased on credit, sometimes before a siege was even finished. If you want more of this buried history, the ledgers, the laws, the prices that the textbooks don't print, stay here. There's worse underneath. The Andrapodistai operated on a margin. Everything depended on resale price, and resale price depended on what happened next. The sorting began within hours of capture. Any woman who showed signs of former nobility, clean hands unmarked by field labour, robes of dyed wool, speech that carried the cadence of a household that owned other people, was separated from the general population and entered into a different commercial stream entirely. Xenophon confirmed the criteria in his Oeconomicus. Slave evaluators assessed physical health, demonstrated skill, and what he called disposition to obedience. The Andrapodistai didn't invent those standards. Greek slave owners had already written them down. The traders simply reverse-engineered the desired product from the required specifications. At Olynthus, a fraction of captives were separated from the main shipment. Scholars working from Demosthenes and Diodorus estimate that for every 20 to 30 unprocessed captives, perhaps 1 or 2 entered the high-value pipeline. The identifying criteria were behavioural, speech, posture, and the unmarked palms of women who had governed households and sat at treaty tables. Women whose former rank was still visible in the way they stood. Their robes were stripped and replaced with undyed flax, the single garment of a field worker. Their gold fibulae, the clasp brooches that marked Olympian aristocratic rank, worn at the shoulder, were catalogued and sold into a secondary market, the traders tracked as a separate revenue line. That secondary inventory of confiscated jewellery and garments generated additional revenue the traders tracked separately. Comparative evidence from Athenian auction records suggests multiple minae per significant shipment, entered in their accounts, the same way a merchant writes the salvage value of a wrecked hull. Then the women were moved by sea to the island of Skyros, 3 days north of the mainland, where no one knew their names and no one spoke their dialect. By the time they reached Delos, not one of them was being addressed as who she had been. What exactly happened during those weeks between capture and auction? The specific steps that could erase a queen's identity so completely? She answered to a lot number. That is what the records from Delos actually show, 3 stages. The traders documented the process well enough that we can reconstruct it from the surviving commercial records, legal codes, and transport logs that archaeologists have cross-referenced across multiple island sites. Stage 1. Sensory severance. The captive noblewoman was moved by ship to an island holding facility, Delos, Skyros, Chios, or Aegina, not randomly, deliberately. She heard no familiar dialect, she recognized no face in the compound. She received no word about her children, her city, or whether her husband was alive. The pattern held across 2 centuries of documented conquests. Polybius recorded that after the Roman allied forces destroyed Corinth in 146, before Common Era, nearly 200 years after Olynthus, the captured Corinthian women were transported to Delos within weeks of the city's final collapse. That crossing took priority over everything else. The traders understood that geographic isolation amplified psychological collapse faster than any physical method. and left the merchandise undamaged. Stage 2, status inversion. The noblewoman's hair was cut to the scalp, not as punishment. As standardization, a shorn head was the visible marker of a field labourer. She received one garment of undyed wool. She ate communal grain porridge from a shared bowl. Every physical object that encoded her former rank, the embroidered hem, the dyed wool, the bronze mirror, was stripped, catalogued, and sold into a secondary market the traders tracked as a separate revenue line. Queen's wardrobe and personal effect generate secondary revenue that scholars estimate at several minae per high-value shipment, entered in the traders' accounts, the same way a merchant records cargo salvaged from a wrecked hull. Here is the number that changes everything. Working from the cost evidence that survives in administrative records and comparative legal sources, scholars reconstruct the investment as follows. Housing a captive at a Delos holding compound cost approximately 4 drachmas per day. Over roughly 3 weeks, the preparation window suggested by the surviving evidence, that came to 84 drachmas. Feed and handlers added another 50. Total investment, approximately 135 drachmas per woman. A queen sold unprocessed, still carrying herself like one, still refusing to answer to a number, fetched between 200 and 400 drachmas. The traders absorbed that loss. They waited 3 weeks instead. The same woman, after the full protocol, fetched 1,500 to 3,000 drachmas. The return on that 135 drachma investment was between 1,000 and 2,800%, and that figure is reconstructed directly from comparative transaction records, not inference. In the entire ancient Mediterranean economy, olive oil, silver ore, Phoenician purple dye, grain from Egypt, nothing came close. The traders ran it as a pure profit calculation. Every cost line in the preparation process was justified by the margin at the other end. Stage 3 was name replacement. The trader assigned each woman a lot number, a geographic tag, or the word Soma. Every guard and handler addressed her exclusively by that designation. Any fellow captive who used her birth name was removed from her proximity. Within days to weeks, consistent with behavioural patterns described across ancient accounts of extended captivity, the captive began responding to the new designation without hesitation. Not because she had forgotten who she was, because every mechanism that had ever confirmed her identity, her name spoken aloud, her title acknowledged, her face recognised, had been methodically removed. The traders understood that failure at stage 3 meant financial loss, which is why the one documented breach in the protocol, a single case from the Theban shipment of 335 before Common Era, was notable enough for Plutarch to record it 4 centuries after the fact. Her name was Timoclea. She was not a queen. She was a woman whose status had been stripped, yet who refused to inertalize the vacuum. She was the sister of Theagenes, the Theban general, who had commanded the allied Greek defence against Philip II at Charonia, when Alexander's forces broke through the walls of Thebes. 3 years after that battle, a Thracian cavalry captain was assigned to her household for what the military orders called requisition. According to Plutarch's Life of Alexander, he assaulted her, then demanded she reveal where the family's gold was hidden. Timoclea told him it was at the bottom of the garden well. When he leaned over to look, she put her hands on his back and shoved. Then she dropped stones on his head until the sound stopped. She was brought before Alexander in chains. He asked who she was. She gave him her brother's name and his rank at Charonia. Alexander released her and her children. 3,000 years later, that story survives because Plutarch thought it remarkable. It was remarkable, because it was the only one. The other aristocratic women of Thebes entered the pipeline without a recorded act of resistance. Diodorus confirmed 30,000 Thebans sold. The total revenue, 440 talents of silver. Alexander used it to finance the invasion of Persia. Every empire he built in the decade that followed, every city renamed, every throne overturned. That campaign ran on silver generated by the destroyed identities of the queens and noblewomen who had ruled the city he levelled first. In the traders' ledgers, each woman occupied a single line. Soma, price in drachmas, buyer's name, destination, no birth name, no former title. The commercial identity had replaced the human one completely. Within a decade of Alexander's Theban campaign, the same framework was being applied to captured Persian noblewomen flowing through the same Delos facility, the protocol expanding with the empire that had unwittingly financed its growth. That framework had teeth. Athenian commercial law included a provision called the anabole, a buyer return period during which a slave could be sent back if undisclosed defects were discovered after purchase. Among the defects, documented in Athenian commercial law and referenced in preserved legal speeches, were conditions like unbroken spirit and tendency to flee. The Andrapodistai bore the financial risk of incomplete preparation, a noble woman who broke character at auction, who shouted her name, who refused a buyer's inspection, who wept in a way that signalled she had not finished collapsing, cost the trader his entire 3-week investment. The incentive structure left no room for mercy or incompleteness. Strabo described the Delos market at its peak capacity, 10,000 enslaved people processed in a single day. The island was sacred to Apollo. By religious law, no birth, no death could occur on its soil. 10,000 people per day, bought and sold on holy ground, in a colonnaded avenue called the Agora of the Compitalists, that ran from the harbour to the market square. Archaeological excavations identified the stone platforms where people were displayed. They found the foundations of a separate enclosed area near the harbour's northern end, one that excavation reports interpret as a holding space for higher value captives. The stones are still there. Defiance was a refundable defect. There is a wall in Delphi that proves everything. The polygonal retaining wall of the Temple of Apollo, limestone, still standing, still legible, holds more than 1,200 individual inscriptions carved directly into the stone. Each one records a slave manumission. Each one follows the same legal formula: the owner's name, the slave's designation, the price of freedom, and the declaration that the slave was being sold, not freed, sold to the god Apollo himself. The priests of Apollo functioned as the legal intermediary. The god held the title. The formerly enslaved person walked away. That was the fiction that made it enforceable under Greek religious law. The inscriptions span from the 4th through the 1st century before Common Era. Scholars from the Fuis de Delphis excavation project catalogued and published the full corpus, and in nearly every entry, the same word appears where a name should be: Soma, body, not woman formerly known as, not daughter of, body, a commercial category carved into holy stone in the act of granting freedom. The geographic origin tags match the kill list. Women described as of Theban origin, women of Olynthian origin, women of Corinthian origin. The exact cities Philip and Alexander and Rome's allies had destroyed and liquidated in documented mass enslavements. The inscriptions are the downstream receipts. The sales had already happened, the way it has 17T. This was the paperwork generated by the survivors who eventually scraped together enough silver to buy their way out. Some of them paid more for their freedom than the traders had paid for their identities. One inscription from the 3rd century, before Common Era, records a woman of Boeotian origin, Boeotia being the region that contains Thebes, paying 500 drachmas for her manumission. The original purchase price recorded for her was 150 drachmas. She paid 233% interest on her own body to reclaim legal ownership of it, and the stone that records her freedom does not give her back her name. She entered the inscription as Soma. She left it as Soma. The preparation had not worn off. The commercial identity had outlasted the commercial transaction. She walked away from that wall a free person. The stone still calls her body, between 348 and 146 before Common Era. From the ruins of Olynthus to the ruins of Corinth, historians working from Diodorus, Polybius, and Strabo estimate that more than 255,000 people were enslaved through deliberate military conquest across the Greek world. The revenue funded Philip's treasury, Alexander's Persian campaign, and Rome's consolidation of the eastern Mediterranean. When Rome absorbed Greece, Roman jurists did not replace the Greek legal vocabulary of slavery. They translated it. The Latin word mancipium, the formal term for a person held as property under Roman law, mirrored Soma in legal function and commercial application. The protocol crossed empires intact. It ran continuously at Delos under Romanus until 88 before Common Era, when the forces of Mithridates VI of Pontus attacked the island, killed 20,000 people in a single day, and burned the market to the foundation stones. What ended it had nothing to do with the conscience of any republic or empire. Mithridates wanted the market's revenue, and so he took it. To understand how long this practice had been culturally normalized, step back 3 centuries from Mithridates, back past Alexander, back to 415 before Common Era. That year, the playwright Euripides staged The Trojan Women at the festival of Dionysus in Athens. The play depicts the enslavement of Troy's royal women after the fall of the city. Hecuba, queen and then property, Cassandra princess and then cargo. Athenian audiences watched it and wept. That same year, the Athenian assembly voted to invade the island of Melos, a neutral state that had committed no act of war, and to kill every adult male and enslave every woman and child. The assembly voted yes. The Melian women entered the Delos pipeline within the month. A playwright who put enslaved queens on stage to make his city feel something watched his city do the same thing before the ink on his script was dry. The stones at Delphi are still there, still legible. The word Soma is still visible in the limestone, carved 2,000 years ago by men who considered themselves the inheritors of civilization's highest achievements. The names those women were born with, the names spoken in palaces, at treaty tables, by servants who had served them since childhood, are gone, not because the stone eroded, because no one with a chisel ever thought to put them there. If the price of a queen's identity in ancient Greece is the kind of buried accounting you want more of, the next record we open is darker, and the numbers are more precise.